Hi, this is Anthony Dow with the Mid-Atlantic Center for Emergency Management and Public Safety and curriculum developer for the GIS pathway under the Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness Program. And today I'll be providing an overview of ArcGIS Pro. And ArcGIS Pro is the newest addition to the Esri ArcGIS for Desktop suite. In previous sessions, I've covered ArcGIS Online, which is Esri's web-based platform, and ArcGIS Desktop, which is probably the most similar application to ArcGIS Pro. And so those two applications, they're both desktop applications, and they both share a lot of similarities. However, ArcGIS Pro has quite a few enhancements and additional functionality that allow you to do things like to work in 2D and 3D within the same map, to be able to integrate seamlessly with ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise Portal, and some other really nice user functionality that I'll touch on today. And so just to get started, I'll just hit on some of the key terminology specific to ArcGIS Pro, because a lot of the terminology is going to be different than what you probably learned if you're using ArcGIS Desktop or even ArcGIS Online. And so the first one that I'll cover is the project. And within ArcGIS Pro, a project is a collection of related items that are organized. And a project in ArcGIS Pro is somewhat similar to a map document that you'd have in ArcGIS Desktop. However, within a ArcGIS Pro project, you can have multiple maps, scenes, layouts, as well as data and tools and toolboxes. And so a project in ArcGIS Pro is going to organize all of that project-specific information for you in one centralized location. By default, every project that you create in ArcGIS Pro is going to have its own dedicated geodatabase. So it'll store the information tied to that project as needed. You can still link to other data sets, databases, services as needed, but you do have that centralized data repository tied to each project. It's also going to have its own toolbox that you can use if you were to develop your own tools to run geoprocessing operations. So you're going to have that dedicated geodatabase and the dedicated toolbox for every single ArcGIS Pro project that you create. A project in ArcGIS Pro is going to have the extension of .aprx, whereas in ArcGIS Desktop, a map document is going to be an MXD, and a map package would be an MPK. So again, within that project, you can have multiple maps, multiple scenes, and other contents as well. The next thing I want to point out in ArcGIS Pro is just the general interface, and it's going to look quite a bit different than what you've seen in ArcGIS Desktop, where you've got toolbars and collections of various tools that are docked in your main window here. In ArcGIS Pro, it's ribbon-based. So this main ribbon that you see that runs horizontally across the top of the screen is going to be your main ribbon, and it's always going to be present regardless of what you're doing in ArcGIS Pro. However, the contents of that ribbon are going to change depending on what you're doing. So as you can see in this main ribbon, we've got a number of tabs that are available. So right now we've got our project tab, our map tab, we've got an insert, analysis, view, edit, imagery, and share. So we've got a number of tabs that are available here. And some of these tabs, including project and analysis and view and imagery and others, are going to be core tabs, and they're not going to change regardless of what you're doing. They're always going to be visible. However, other tabs are contextual tabs, and so they're going to change and be visible or not visible depending on what you're doing in the map. And I'll show some examples of that later in terms of how tabs are visible and how to make them visible. Next thing I'll touch on are views. And in ArcGIS Online, your views are going to be your windows, your main windows that you're going to be working with. And your views can include maps, which are 2D data visualizations, much like you'd have a map data frame in ArcGIS for Desktop. You can also have scenes, and scenes are going to be 3D visualizations where you can explore and visualize data in 3D as well as edit data in 3D, which is a nice enhancement that ArcGIS Pro has. You've also got layouts, which are maps that you can then format and turn into cartographic products that you can export out to various formats and use to share information. You can also have views for layouts and charts, reports, and other items as well. So your views are going to be organized in this main window here, and every view that you have open is going to be in this main pane that you see. So you can see right now, I've got a number of views open. I've got my catalog view, which is the catalog that you can use to manage your data and to explore your data. I've got a map tab open, one map view, a scene, and a layout. So I've got one of each of maps, a map, a scene, and a layout open here in my ArcGIS Pro project. You can have multiple maps and you can have multiple scenes or multiple layouts stored in one ArcGIS Pro project. However, you can only have one as the active view. So that active view is going to be highlighted. So right now you can see that my map is highlighted. That's my active view. And that's what's visible in my main window here. If I were to click over to my catalog, I would then get into my catalog view. And that catalog view would allow me to explore the contents of my project. You can see here my project gives me the ability to explore the maps that I have in this project, toolboxes, databases, geoprocessing history, layouts, and other items. Same thing applies here to scene, as well as layout. So you can see whichever of those that you have highlighted and clicked on, that's going to be the active view that you're working with in your ArcGIS Pro project. And I'll just point out here, you'll notice as I click between those various views that I have in my current project, starting with map view, you'll see that I've got a number of tabs available. So I've got project and map, which is my main tab in map view, as well as some others. And you can see that as I go to these other views, different items might become available. So you can see here that when I go over to between layout and map, that I have different options available for me. Under layout, I've got the ability to format my map frame. When I go over to my map itself, that's no longer available. So again, as you go through the different views, various options are going to be made available on that main ribbon that you have available in ArcGIS Pro. In addition to your views, you've also got panes. And panes are dockable windows that display contents of a view. And so there are various panes that you can enable. You can see right now I've got my contents pane open. And depending on what you enable, you can have various panes open in your ArcGIS Pro document. So if I were to go here and, for example, open up my Symbology, you'll see that my Symbology pane will open up over here. And so you can have panes that you have open for content, for symbology, for geoprocessing, as well as others. These panes they're dockable, so you can move them around. You can dock them in various locations within your window. You can put them on a separate monitor if you had them. So you've got the ability to move those panes around and kind of customize it to your preferences as needed. You've also got the ability to set panes up to either to float. Again, you can dock them by just dragging the pane and finding a place on your map where you'd like to dock it. So if I were to float and I can drag this, it'll give me the option to either dock it on the right side, left side, top or bottom, or on the outside edge here. So I'm just going to dock it over here on the outside. You can also set panes up to auto hide, so you can keep that pane open. But if you have auto hide enabled, once you pan away, that pane is going to hide itself. So in order to get it back open, you just go back over to where you have it docked. You click on it and it becomes visible again. So it gives you the ability to hide them when you're not using them, but to easily get back to them and open them up as needed. If you want to close a specific pane, you can just click the X in the top right corner and that'll close it. And you can always open it back up through the same method that you got it there in the first place. And then finally, I'll just show you the settings. So if you go over here to the project tab, which is going to be that first tab on your ribbon, you'll see that's going to give you some options here for general settings within ArcGIS Pro. This is where you can get to go and modify ArcGIS Pro options and configurations. You can configure your licensing and your portal connections here. And you can either get there from that project tab, as I mentioned, or if you're at the ArcGIS Pro start page, you can go in the lower left corner and click your settings button. So you got two ways to get to this page. And here's where you can also explore your recent projects. You can browse and you can locate an existing project that you have. If you have projects that you have on your portal, you can get to them from here. So again, that project tab is going to give you access to all those options. So I'll just walk through some of the key steps in terms of working with projects, working with maps and scenes and layouts, and just some of the basic items that you'll want to be aware of as you get up and running with ArcGIS Pro. So as far as the tools on your ribbon, you can see, as I mentioned, I've got my map enabled here, my map view. And so that's giving me a number of tabs that are visible to me in the main ribbon. So on my map tab here, I've got Explore, which Explore is going to give you the option to go through and navigate within your map window. And so you can see here, it gives me some nice tips for how to interact with my map in terms of being able to zoom. Some of these options are specific to working in 3D, which would be in a scene. So it gives you some ability to navigate in 3D. Also continuous zoom and other options as well. You can also choose here whether you want to explore your topmost layer, only your visible layers, selectable layers, items that are selected in your contents, or your candidate pop-up. So what that's going to do is help you to determine what you want to make available when you click on it. So if you were to select visible layers, when you click on a location in your map, only those layers that are visible in your table of contents are going to display, which is really helpful if you have quite a few layers in your map, including a lot of overlapping features. Sometimes you want to enable one of these options so that you're only getting access to the features that you'd like. Here we've got some tools for navigating as well. So we've got the ability to go to the full extent of the data. So this is going to be for all of the data that's in the table of contents. You've got fixed zoom in and fixed zoom out, and you've got some tools for going back to your previous extent or to your next extent. So those are some navigate tools. Here you've got access to bookmarks, much like you can do in ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Online. You can set bookmarks that'll help you to get back to different locations in your map very easily. You've got your base map, so you've got these pre-existing Esri base maps that look pretty similar to what you'd have as base map options in ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Desktop. And here's also where you're able to add data to your map. So it can come from an existing location on a server or on your computer. You can also pull from paths or URLs and other options that are available to create various data layers from route events or XY events or others. You've also got your selection tools here in this section, so you can select features by a lasso or a polygon or a circle or some other shape that you can draw manually on the map. You can also select here by attribute or by location and do some querying to select individual features or subsets of features from your map. And then you've got some other tools for inquiry and the ability to create infographics, to do measurements on your map, or to locate features. And you can use addresses, coordinates, place names, points of interest. It'll help you to locate those within your map. And then you've also got this labeling section, which allows you to create labels, to turn those labels into annotation and to work with those labels in your map. Going over to the insert, this is where you have the ability to add to your project. So here you can add a new map. So you can take a map and add a new one to your project, creating a new fresh map that you can work with. Same applies to a new scene if you're going to work in 3D. You can create new layouts. And again, those layouts are for creating cartographic products and maps that you want to take and add map elements to, such as legends and scale bars and title blocks, something that's a little more refined that you can then export and then use for map deliverables and so forth. You've also got the ability here to work with your toolboxes, to establish connections to existing databases or servers or address locators. So your insert tab is going to give you the access to work with those types of functions. The analysis tab is primarily tied to analytic tools and to geoprocessing. So you'll see here that some of the most common used tools are going to be available here in this general tools area. And you can zoom down and you'll see there are some nice handy ones that are used pretty frequently. You can also explore in the geoprocessing toolbox. This will actually pull open your geoprocessing pane, and it gives you the ability to search for a tool by name or by description. And so you can get access to various tools and toolboxes that are already existing in the ArcGIS suite through that pane. You can also access ready-to-use tools here if you have access to ArcGIS Online hosted data and analytic capabilities. That'll typically require credits, but if you are using the Esri package that is made available to K-12 instructors, you're probably going to have access to those services, and I do recommend using them if you can. Moving down the list here to view. This is going to give you a couple of nice tools. I'll hit on a couple of the key ones. The first is Convert, and Convert allows you to take a map and convert it to a 3D scene, or to take a 3D scene and convert it into a 2D map. So you can click on that, and it'll take everything that you've got in that map or that scene and convert it over to the other. So that's a nice way to turn a 2D map into a 3D scene, keeping all of your data, keeping all your symbology, and so forth, and then taking it into 3D. The Edit tab is next, and editing is different in ArcGIS Pro than it is in ArcGIS for desktop. In ArcGIS Desktop, you'll probably recall that you have to begin an editing session to be able to edit data in the map. That's not the case with ArcGIS Pro, so you're able to edit on the fly without having an editing session. It's just a different process, and it just takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's pretty seamless once you're familiar and comfortable with it. And you can see here that you've got the ability within that edit tab to create new features, to modify existing. And then there are some more advanced editing tools here that are available for you to use as needed. The Imagery tab provides some nice tools for working with raster data of various types. I won't go into detail on this one, but there are some nice tools for doing raster functions, for editing functions and classifying data. So I won't dwell on that one too much, but it is definitely worth exploring some of the neat functionality that's included there. The Share tab is where you will go to share a project, a map, a layer, or a geoprocessing tool, and you can share that in ArcGIS Online. You can share it via a map package or some other type of standalone file. So this is the place that you would go to share information, as well as to print or export your maps out. So those are the main tabs in the map window. Again, you're going to have some contextual tabs that are going to be available as well. So you can see here that because I am highlighting a layer in my table of contents here in this specific map, you can see my feature layer tab is popping up, and that's giving me the ability to change the appearance of my layer, add labeling to my layer, and to work with the data and to do some things related to adding fields or subtypes or domains, to doing joins or relates, exporting features, and so forth. If I were to move off of that layer and just go to my general map, you can see here that that option is going to go away because I'm not accessing a specific data set. So when I go back to it again, that functionality becomes available again, and that symbology pane that I mentioned becomes visible to me. So just for example here, when I had that highlighted, my symbology tab is open. It's going to give me the symbology options for working with that specific layer. And from there, I can go in and I can modify the colors, the outlines, and so forth, much like I would in some of the other Esri products that you've been working with. So I'm going to switch over now and just show a demonstration of a scene. So again, in my map view, as I mentioned, we're looking at data in 2D. So you can see that I've got this building elevations polygon layer that I have. I've got a base map from Esri, the topographic base map. And some of the options that I just demonstrated. If I'm to go over to my scene, and I created this scene from my map, so you're going to see the same layer, you can see I'm getting access to that same data, but in a 3D view. So I'm looking at the exact same data set that I mentioned, but I just did a quick extrusion to add some height to these building polygons based on an attribute that's available. And you can see in this 3D view now, in my scene, I have the ability to zoom around in 3D in this data set. I can change the perspective here and look at it from various angles. I can zoom in and out. I can pan around. I can click on features much like I would, and I can look at information about those features. So almost all the same functionality that you have in the map, you have in the scene. However, you're working in the 3D environment there, so you've got some really nice visualization tools. And again, in ArcGIS Pro, you've also got the ability to edit in 3D, which is really neat if you're working with 3D enabled data sets. Finally, I'll just show an example of a quick layout. And again, that layout is used to create a more refined map. So here, I've got the ability to change my map frame, so I can go and I could either pull in one of the maps that I have in my project or one of my scenes, or I can create a new one to make this layout. And that layout then I can build on, and I can add map elements like a north arrow, a scale bar, a legend, or infographics and charts that help to tell whatever story I'm looking to tell in my map. Within that map layout, I can also change the dimensions, so I can change the orientation from portrait to landscape. I can change the size of my map. I can add text and graphics. So here's where you would really refine your map and turn it into something that you can then export out and use as a standalone document. The last thing that I will touch on today is switching to dark theme, which is a nice functionality if you like the dark theme that you have access to in a lot of the newer Windows applications, including Microsoft Office. So if you go back to that projects tab that I mentioned earlier and go down to options, you'll see that you've got lots of options for your current project. And here you can change not only information about the name of your project and where it lives, you can also change the native units in terms of distance and areas and location. You can look at the task history, and you can either enable or disable that task history and all the various operations that you performed. And you've got other options here for the application. And this is where you can really customize how the application looks and how it feels, and really tailor it to your preferences and how you like things to look and how you like things to behave. So there's a lot of customization options, and you can really dig into these and try to find what you're most comfortable with and what you really like. The one thing that I mentioned that I liked was dark mode. So if you go down here to application to the general tab, you can change your theme to light or dark. You'd have to restart ArcGIS Pro for that to take effect, but it does provide a nice, unique perspective there. And you've also got the same types of customizations that you can enable for maps and scenes, for your navigation tools. So again, this is where you can get in and really customize it for your preferences. So that was just a very brief overview of ArcGIS Pro. Hopefully it was helpful in helping you get up and running with this new application from Esri. Again, a lot of the terminology is going to be a lot different than what you've seen in other Esri products, but it is pretty intuitive. And once you spend some time working with the various functions of the ribbon, and you get used to the ribbon style application and the way that the tools are made available, it's pretty easy to get up and running with it. So I appreciate your time and for joining me today, and look forward to joining you in the next session. Thank you.